The air left my lungs like I'd been punched when Chloe pressed her baby into my arms and lifted the microphone with her other hand. The ballroom at the Palmer House was all crystal light and cream linen, polished brass railings catching the glow, while 300 glossy graduation programs lay fanned across the tables like evidence. My niece was warm against my chest, her tiny fingers hooked in the collar of my navy dress, and across from me my mother was already smiling for the room, one hand braced on the stem of a champagne flute, the other flattening the front of her silk jacket as if she were about to accept an award. My father stood half a step behind her with his cuff links flashing under the chandeliers, jaws set, shoulders squared. Aunt Melissa had her phone up and recording. Chloe, still in her cap and gown with her honor cord sliding off one shoulder, turned toward the crowd and beamed as though this had all been rehearsed. "It's official," she said brightly, bouncing on her heels. "Naomi has agreed to take Lily permanently, so I can finally move forward with my life." The applause started before my brain finished catching up. My name is Naomi Bennett. I'm 31. And this is the story of how my parents tried to hand me my sister's baby in front of a ballroom full of witnesses, and how that stunt ended with all of them signing their own collapse. For 1 second, the room was nothing but sound. Glasses clinking, chairs scraping, somebody at the back shouting, "That's beautiful." Lily made a small, sleepy noise and buried her face into me. Chloe smiled wider, the way she always did when a lie landed cleanly. My mother took a step forward, chin lifted, eyes shining with that hard, triumphant brightness she wore whenever she thought she had cornered someone in public. My father adjusted the papers in his hand without looking at them. Thick cream cardstock, blue tab at the top, a gold notary seal catching the light. There it was, the trap. Family friends rose from their chairs. Cousins reached for their phones. My mother's bridge club had already started crying. One of Chloe's sorority friends covered her mouth in delight. The whole room was arranged exactly the way my family liked to arrange things. Enough witnesses to make refusal look cruel, enough sentiment to make coercion look like generosity. "Smile, Naomi," my mother said through her teeth, keeping her lips pleasantly curved for the room. "This is a happy day." Chloe angled the microphone away from her mouth and leaned in close enough for me to smell the vanilla gloss on her lips. "Don't do that tight little face," she whispered. "You're going to ruin my video." Then she turned back to the room, tears suddenly glittering at the corners of her eyes with theatrical precision. "I just want everyone to know," she said, voice wavering on cue, "that I couldn't have finished school without my family. Especially my sister. She's always been the dependable one. And now she's giving Lily the stable home she deserves." The applause got louder. My aunt zoomed in with her phone. My father moved to stand beside Chloe, his hand settling at the center of her back in a gesture so practiced it looked automatic. He lifted the papers slightly, enough for the first few rows to see the seal. "We've taken care of everything," he announced. "All the legal work is done." A hot, sharp pulse beat once behind my eyes. Not panic, recognition, because I had known this was coming for 11 days. 4 months. My parents had been treating my life like spare square footage. I had the steady salary, the quiet condo in Lincoln Park, the health insurance, the orderly calendar, the refrigerator with actual groceries in it. Chloe had the chaos and the excuses. She was 22, brilliant in flashes, lazy in habit, and raised on the kind of protection that turns consequences into other people's chores. When she got pregnant during her senior year at DePaul, my parents went into full campaign mode. They called Lily a blessing in public and a timing issue in private. They insisted Chloe needed support, which meant they wanted my weekends, then my evenings, then my patience, then my name on school pickup forms, then access to my guest room, and finally, apparently my entire future. I had said no, calmly, repeatedly, with complete sentences. Temporary babysitting while Chloe studied. Fine. Overnight care during final exams. Once or twice. Permanent guardianship so my sister could still have a chance at life. No. The word never sat well with my family. They treated boundaries the way some people treat parking tickets, as minor obstacles for the less creative. So when direct pressure stopped working, they shifted to performance. Public sympathy. Strategic tears. Soft voice guilt. My mother's favorite phrase was, "A good woman does what the family needs." My father preferred numbers. "You're established, Naomi." Chloe isn't. It makes sense. Chloe, of course, just pouted and said, "Why are you acting like this is such a huge deal? You're better at this stuff than I am." I was still holding Lily when my mother reached for the microphone. "Naomi has always had a nurturing heart," she said, projecting toward the room. When Chloe came to us terrified, Naomi stepped up. "We're just so proud that she's making it official." That was the second lie. The first had been the papers. My cousin Erica, seated near the dance floor, blinked between me and my mother, clearly trying to understand why I hadn't said a word yet. On the far side of the room, Chloe's advisor from the communications department had stopped clapping. He was watching me now. Smart man. He'd noticed what the others hadn't. I wasn't crying. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't frozen. I was measuring the room. Chloe extended a hand toward me, palm up, demanding center frame. "Come here," she said into the microphone. "Let's do the photo." "No," I said. The single syllable cut through the ballroom cleanly enough that the applause stumbled and died. Chloe's smile twitched. My mother's fingers tightened around her glass. My father inhaled once through his nose, the sound nearly lost beneath the hum of the air conditioning. "Naomi," my father said quietly, not into the microphone now. "A warning." I adjusted Lily higher against my shoulder, one hand supporting the back of her head. Then I looked straight at Aunt Melissa's phone. "Keep filming," I said calmly. "You're going to want the whole thing." The silence that followed was absolute. Chloe laughed first. "Too fast. Too loud. Okay. Very funny. It wasn't a joke." My mother's smile disappeared so abruptly it was like a curtain being dropped. "Do not do this here." "You already did it here," I replied. My father took one step toward me, the papers still in his hand. "This is not the time." "Actually," I said, "it's perfect." I shifted Lily to one arm and reached into my purse with the other. Slow. Deliberate. The room watched every movement. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and tapped once. The mirrored ballroom lights slid across the screen as I held it up. "Since we're doing public announcements," I said, "let's do all of them." My mother's face changed first. Just a slight draining at the edges, as if someone had quietly opened a valve. Chloe's shoulders tightened beneath the black polyester of her gown. My father stopped moving. On my screen was a screenshot of Chloe's text thread with Tessa Ward, her sorority big and self-appointed documentarian of every event in her life. Just get her holding Lily on camera. Once everyone sees it, she won't be able to back out without looking heartless. A murmur moved across the room. Chloe recovered quickly, or tried to. "That's out of context." I nodded. "Probably. Which is why I brought more." I swiped. Second screenshot. "Mom says we announce the guardianship after they bring out the cake. Dad got the papers handled. Naomi will cave if there's an audience." Somebody near the bar muttered, "Oh my God." My mother turned toward the crowd with a brittle laugh. "Private family jokes. You know how girls text." "No," I said evenly. "I don't think forged guardianship documents are a family joke." That landed harder than I expected. I could almost feel the room pull back from them. My father found his voice. "Watch yourself." I met his gaze. "I am. That's why I had those papers reviewed yesterday." His jaw flexed. Chloe took a step forward, the microphone trembling slightly in her hand. "You had no right to go through my phone." "I didn't need to." That was revelation one. I turned the phone so the first few tables could see another image. A PDF. Date stamped. From Camille Sloan, family attorney, Sloan and Mercer, River North. Review complete. Signature appears copied from prior lease file. Notary license flagged inactive as of May 3rd. My aunt's phone dipped, then lifted again. "They're fake," Erica whispered, not realizing the room was quiet enough for everyone to hear her. "Invalid," I said, "which is even worse for the people who tried to use them." My mother straightened, voice suddenly sharp. "Naomi, enough." I took a breath and kept going. Revelation 2. I opened an email chain and held it higher. 2 weeks ago, someone used my tax return, my employment verification, and my digital signature to complete a kinship caregiver packet in my name. Now the noise in the room was a ragged thing. Questions. Half-words. Chairs shifting. Chloe's mouth opened. Closed. My father finally abandoned the performance. "Put your phone down." "Why?" "Because you're embarrassing your sister." I almost smiled. "No," I said. She did that herself. Then I showed the third item. A one-way flight confirmation from O'Hare to Barcelona, purchased 4 weeks earlier in Chloe's name. Departure Monday, 2 days after graduation. Non-refundable. This, I said, is why we're here. Chloe went pale under her makeup. My mother stared at her. You said that was deferred. Chloe snapped around. I said I was figuring it out. You told us September, my father said. That was before. Before what? Before your ambush failed. I let the implications settle over the room. It spread through the ballroom in waves. People putting pieces together. Chloe's sudden insistence on a family celebration. My parents' overeager smiles. The papers. The baby in my arms. The flight. My mother hissed, Chloe. Chloe's eyes darted between my parents, then to the room, then to me. This was supposed to be private. I tilted my head. Was it? My father stepped closer, voice dropping into that cold register he used with bank tellers and valets, and anyone he believed existed beneath consequence. Give me the baby and leave. No. His nostrils flared. I kept my voice level. Lily is staying with me tonight because the three of you just tried to traffic responsibility in a hotel ballroom with fake legal documents. A gasp broke somewhere near the dessert table. Chloe actually laughed, though it came out thin and cracked. Traffic responsibility? Wow. Listen to yourself. I have, I said. That's why I recorded everything. That was Revelation 4, though I hadn't planned to use it yet. I tapped my screen again, and from the tiny speaker came my mother's voice from 3 nights earlier, crisp and unmistakable. Once Lily's in Naomi's car seat and everyone's congratulating her, she won't make a scene. My father's voice followed. If she does, she'll look unstable. Either way, Chloe gets on the plane. My mother lunged for the phone. I stepped back. My heels struck the dance floor like a metronome. The room erupted. Questions flew from every side at once. You were sending her away? Whose idea was that? Fake papers. Is the father involved? That last question came from Chloe's advisor. Smart again. I looked directly at him. He is now. Chloe's head snapped toward me, so fast the tassel on her cap slapped her cheek. What did you do? Nothing dramatic, I said. I returned his calls. That was Revelation 5, and it hit her hardest because Julian Morales had not vanished. He had not abandoned Chloe. He had not refused responsibility. He had been shut out, blocked, lied to, told by my mother that Chloe wanted no contact and that his involvement would disrupt her future. He was a paramedic on the South Side, 24 years old, tired around the eyes and steadier than any of them had given him credit for. I found that out after he left me a voicemail so careful, so controlled, that I listened to it 3 times in my parked car outside Trader Joe's. Miss Bennett, I know we've never spoken. I'm trying to do this the right way. I just need to know if my daughter is safe. That was the moment the whole structure shifted for me. Because whatever mess Chloe had made of her own life, Lily was not a prop, not a bargaining chip, not a baton to be passed from the least convenient hands to the most convenient pair. She was a child, and children deserve adults who don't use an audience to decide their future. Julian petitioned for paternity last week, I said, still looking at Chloe. His hearing request is already filed. My mother's hand flew to her throat. You went behind our backs. I let that sit there. Then I said, yes. The word was calm enough to make her step back. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them. They had spent so many years mistaking my silence for obedience that they genuinely had not conceived of this version of events. My father, who had built a career on risk assessment, had failed to identify the obvious one in his own home. Chloe, who thought charm could dissolve paperwork, had confused applause for immunity. My mother, who curated family image like a museum collection, had put the forgery seal in the center of the display. You're ruining everything, Chloe whispered. No, I said. I'm stopping you. Her face collapsed inward, not with remorse but with outrage. You knew. This whole time. You knew and you let us. Talk. I finished for her. Plan. Send emails. Forward drafts. Use the shared drive. Yes. My father stared at me. Truly stared. As if I had just stepped out from behind my own reflection. You set us up. I almost laughed at the word choice. No, I said. You walked into the room you built. My phone vibrated once in my hand. A text from Camille. Conference room confirmed for Monday. Bring originals. Morales Council attending. I locked the screen. This party is over, my father barked. No, I replied. Your performances. Then I handed Lily carefully to Monica Morales, who had stepped into the doorway of the ballroom 10 seconds earlier with Julian beside her and a diaper bag over one shoulder. They had not rushed in. They had not interrupted. They had waited until I had enough room to move. Monica wore a charcoal dress and a face made of stone. Julian's paramedic posture was impossible to miss, straight-backed even in a borrowed blazer. Several people turned. More murmurs. Recognition spreading now into a different kind of shock. Chloe went white as paper. You brought them here. I picked up my purse. I brought witnesses who actually belong in this story. Julian took Lily with reverent care, like he was receiving glass and light at the same time. Monica met my eyes and gave the smallest nod. Chloe found enough breath for one last swing. You think this makes you noble. It makes you disgusting. I looked at her for a long moment, at the graduation cords, the trembling lipstick, the panic she was still trying to arrange into indignation. Then I said, Monday, 10 a.m., don't be late. I turned and walked through the ballroom while the room split open behind me. Questions followed. My mother calling my name. My father shouting for the papers. Chloe's voice rising into a pitch I'd only heard when something expensive broke. But none of it touched me. The carpet in the hall outside was thick and patterned in burgundy and gold. The hotel air smelled faintly of lemon polish and old money. I pushed through the brass-framed doors and into the cool afternoon on Monroe Street. They thought they had trapped me with a baby in an audience. They had no idea I had spent nearly 2 weeks arranging a table with sharper edges than any ballroom could hide. The next 48 hours were loud, then strangely quiet. My mother called 19 times before midnight. My father sent 3 texts, each more formal than the last, as if changing tone might change reality. We should discuss this privately. You have escalated a family misunderstanding. Attend Monday prepared to act like an adult. Chloe's messages came in bursts. Anger first, then blame, then a kind of frantic nostalgia. How could you do this to me on my graduation day? Mom hasn't stopped crying. You know I was overwhelmed. I thought you loved Lily. That last one stayed on my screen for a full minute before I archived it. Love, in my family, had always been used as a lever. If you loved us, you would. If you loved her, you'd. If you loved the baby, then surely. They weaponized devotion until it sounded like obligation. I was done confusing the two. Monday morning, Sloane and Mercer smelled like cedar, coffee, and the particular stillness of expensive litigation. The conference room on the 21st floor overlooked the river. Walnut table, leather chairs, frosted glass walls, a tray of water bottles lined up with labels turned outward. Authority has a texture. It gleams. It absorbs noise. It makes liars sit straighter. I arrived 10 minutes early in a charcoal suit and low heels, carrying a slim black folder and no visible emotion. Camille Sloane was already there, sleeves crisp beneath her ivory blazer, silver pen laid exactly parallel to her legal pad. She was in her early 40s, composed in the way only very competent people are, with a voice that never needed volume to establish rank. You look rested, she said. I slept. Good. They didn't. That made me smile once. At 9:58, Julian arrived with his attorney, Nia Grant, and Monica. Julian looked better in daylight than he had in the ballroom doorway, less spectral, more solid. Navy tie, hands clasped in front of him to keep from fidgeting. Monica carried herself like a woman who had already survived enough to stop fearing performance. She gave me a warm look and took the chair 2 places down. At 10:03, my parents came in first. It was almost startling to see how much smaller they looked without chandeliers and an audience. My mother's lipstick was too pale for her skin. She held her handbag with both hands, knuckles tight around the handle. My father had the stiff, overheated look of a man whose certainty had been keeping his blood pressure in place. Chloe came last, sunglasses still on despite the indoor lighting. She took them off only when Camille gestured toward the chair across from me. Mascara shadows showed under her eyes. Her gown and cords were gone. She looked younger and meaner without them. Then came the unexpected 4th member of their side, Aunt Melissa. I hadn't expected that, though I should have. My aunt had spent 40 years confusing loyalty with participation. If there was a bad decision in motion, she liked to be near it with a casserole and a camera. Camille waited until everyone was seated. Then she folded her hands and said, "This meeting is being documented. No one speaks over council. No one interrupts. We will proceed by timeline." My father leaned forward immediately. "Before we begin, I want it on record that Naomi humiliated this family publicly." Camille didn't even look at him. "Noted." Then she slid a packet down the center of the table. Blue tabs, dates, exhibits. My father went still. "Exhibit 1, Camille said. Email correspondence between Diane Bennett, Robert Bennett, and inactive notary Leonard Pike regarding emergency guardianship papers drafted without Miss Bennett's consent. My mother's eyes flicked to my father. He stared at the packet, as if refusing to focus might change the print. "Exhibit 2, Nia said, taking over smoothly. Text messages from Chloe Bennett to Tessa Ward indicating an intention to coerce consent in a public setting. Chloe's head jerked up. "Tessa gave you my messages?" "She gave us more than that," Camille said. On the screen mounted to the wall behind her, a timeline appeared. March 12th. Chloe accepts post-graduation fellowship in Barcelona. March 18th. Diane Bennett downloads kinship caregiver transfer forms. April 2nd. Robert Bennett emails Leonard Pike requesting clean legal presentation for family event. April 19th. Chloe texts Tessa, "Once she's holding Lily in front of everyone, she won't say no." April 27th. Miss Bennett's lease file accessed from shared family drive. May 1st. Guardianship packet completed using copied signature. May 3rd. Leonard Pike's notary license flagged inactive. May 13th. Julian Morales files paternity petition. May 17th. Graduation event used to announce fraudulent guardianship. It lay there in neat rows like railroad tracks, every bad decision leading exactly where it had led. My father cleared his throat. "This is absurdly dramatized." "Is it inaccurate?" Camille asked. He didn't answer. Chloe pointed at the screen. "The Barcelona thing has nothing to do with custody." Nia looked at her over-steepled fingers. "It has everything to do with motive." My mother finally spoke, voice brittle. "We were trying to keep the baby in the family." Monica gave a short, incredulous laugh, the first sound she had made all morning. "By cutting out her father. He wasn't stable," my mother snapped. Julian answered before Nia could. His voice was low and controlled. "I worked 60-hour weeks and kept asking where my daughter was." Chloe swung toward him. "You didn't want a family. You wanted to feel like the good guy. I wanted to meet my child." The silence after that had weight. Camille pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the screen. Audio waveforms, file names, timestamps. "These," she said, "are voice notes provided by Ms. Ward." Chloe sat back, so abruptly her chair hissed against the floor. There it was, the unexpected ally, the crack in the wall they hadn't seen. Tessa Ward had been with Chloe at nearly every point in the planning, which is precisely why she was so valuable. Chloe trusted her because Tessa had always been useful. She shot her graduation photos, helped edit her resumes, listened to her spiral, held her hair when she drank too much, laughed at jokes that were less funny every year. What Chloe didn't understand was that usefulness has limits, especially around infants. Tessa switched sides for 2 reasons. First, she had been in Chloe's apartment the night Chloe recorded a voice note saying, "Lily cries every time I'm trying to pack. I cannot live like this." Naomi was basically born 40. Tessa had watched Chloe place the baby in a swing, close the bedroom door, and go back to curating outfits for Barcelona. The sound of Lily crying through the door had done something old and painful to her. Tessa's mother had left when she was 6. She knew exactly what abandonment sounded like when adults tried to dress it up as freedom. Second, Chloe asked her to strip metadata from the screenshots. That was the moment Tessa understood it wasn't emotional mess anymore. It was premeditated fraud. So instead, Tessa backed everything up. Original files. Cloud logs. The message where my mother wrote, "Make sure Naomi thinks it's just photos after the ceremony." The message where my father asked if the seal looked official enough. The message where Chloe wrote, "If she cries, it'll actually help." Camille played the audio. Chloe's voice filled the conference room, light and irritated. "Just get my mom to hand me the mic after dessert." Naomi won't make a scene with professors there. Another clip. Dad says once the photos are up online, she won't be able to undo the narrative. Another. Honestly, Lily will have a way better life with Naomi anyway. She likes schedules and oatmeal and all that depressing stuff. My aunt covered her mouth. My mother turned to Chloe. You said that. Chloe's eyes flashed. Oh, so now I'm the problem. My father hit the table with the flat of his hand. Not hard. Hard enough. You keep talking too much. That's the problem. And there it was. The fracture. It moved through them like fire through dry paper. Chloe rounded on him. You made the documents. You told us you had no other option. You said Naomi had basically already agreed. She had helped. My mother cut in, voice climbing. She had the baby overnight. She bought formula. Anyone would think. Anyone dishonest, maybe, I said quietly. My mother looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the first clean flash of fear in her face. Not because I was shouting. Because I wasn't. Camille slid another document down the table. Exhibit 11. Access logs from the shared Bennett family drive. The copied signature used on the guardianship packet originated from a decoy file uploaded by Miss Bennett on April 21st. My father's head lifted slowly. A what? A decoy file, I repeated. He stared at me. I met his gaze. I made sure you'd find exactly what I wanted you to find. His mouth opened. Closed. Chloe whispered, You are insane. Am I? I turned one page in my own folder and slid it across to her. It was a screenshot of my mother logging into the family drive from my parents' home IP at 11:42 p.m. and opening the file labeled Old Signature Docs. Harmless enough on its face, except the PDF contained a hidden forensic watermark Camille's investigator had placed there the day we created it. Once that image appeared in the forged guardianship packet, chain of theft became very easy to prove. My father sat back heavily. The leather chair caught him with a soft collapse. You baited us, he said. No, I said. I documented you. Camille stepped in before he could recover. Here is where we stand. There is exposure for forgery, identity misuse, attempted custodial interference, and civil damages. There is also a pending paternity action with substantial evidence that Mr. Morales was intentionally denied access to his child. If this proceeds publicly, discovery will be broad. Nia added, and very expensive. My aunt made a small panic sound. Criminal. Camille's eyes never left my father. Potentially. The room changed after that. Not all at once. In increments. My mother's shoulders folding in. Chloe crossing her arms, then uncrossing them, then reaching for water with a hand that shook. My father's eyes moving faster than his face, calculating outcomes, trying to price the damage. He was a man who always believed numbers could save him. But there are some ledgers money can only enlarge. Monica spoke for the first time since the audio ended. You kept my son from his daughter, she said. Her voice was calm enough to be frightening. And you were prepared to hand that child to someone else in front of strangers so your daughter could catch a flight. My mother swallowed. We were trying to protect Chloe's future. Monica leaned back in her chair. You should have tried raising her. Chloe flinched like she'd been slapped. For a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she reached for anger again, because anger had always served her better. So what? She said. You all came here to punish me. Great. Congratulations. You win. No, I said. This isn't about winning. She gave me a look full of old contempt. That's rich. It's about Lily. Her laugh came out hollow. You act like you care so much, but you never wanted her. That one was meant to cut. It didn't. I never wanted to be cornered into motherhood for your convenience, I said. That isn't the same thing. She looked away first. Camille set the final packet in the center of the table. This is the agreement we are offering today. 1. Miss Bennett will have no custodial obligation of any kind. 2. Mr. Morales' paternity will be acknowledged immediately with temporary shared support provisions overseen by the court until final custody is entered. 3. Diane Bennett and Robert Bennett will sign affidavits acknowledging that guardianship materials were prepared without Ms. Bennett's consent. 4. All further contact with Ms. Bennett regarding custody, housing, or financial support for Lily will cease. 5. Reimbursement for identity-related expenses and legal fees will be paid within 30 days. Refusal means we file everything. My father's face hardened. You expect us to sign this today? Camille's expression did not change. I expect you to understand the alternative. Chloe turned to my parents, suddenly very young. You said this was fixable. My mother looked at her with a fatigue I had never seen there before. I said Naomi would come around. I thought, not for the first time, how much damage had been done in my family by people mistaking my patience for endless supply. Julian spoke next, and when he did, the whole table quieted. I'm not here to destroy anybody, he said. I'm here because I want my daughter in my life, and because Miss Bennet was the only person in this situation who treated her like a person instead of a problem. Chloe's eyes filled then, not with grief, with humiliation. Public humiliation had always been the only currency she really understood. You're all making me sound monstrous. I folded my hands in front of me. You brought a microphone to an abandonment. She looked down. Nia slid a photo across the table. Lily asleep against Julian's chest in Monica's living room 2 nights earlier, one tiny fist under her chin, evening light warming the couch behind them. Not a legal exhibit, just a fact. This, Nia said softly, is what the court will care about. Something in Chloe's face gave way. It wasn't maturity, but it was the first crack where maturity might someday have to enter. I don't know how to do this, she said. There it was. Small, late, realer than anything she had said in the ballroom. Monica answered before anyone else could. Then you learn. But you do it honestly. My father rubbed a hand over his mouth. My mother stared fixedly at the wood grain in the table, as if it might part and offer a less humiliating version of events. Aunt Melissa was crying now, silently and with great drama, dabbing at her eyes without making a sound. Nobody paid attention to her. Camille uncapped her pen. Cooperate, she said, or we proceed. My father reached for the agreement first. Of course he did. He'd always been first to sign anything when the numbers turned. But his hand hesitated over the page. That mattered more to me than the signature itself. Not the fear, the pause, the instant in which he understood his authority had narrowed to compliance. He signed. My mother signed second, lips pressed together, so tightly the skin around them blanched. Chloe took longest. She stared at the line for nearly a minute, then at Julian, then at me. Finally she said, barely audible, I hate that you were right. I know, I said. She signed. Aunt Melissa, who technically had nothing to sign, still asked if there was anything she needed to initial, which would have been funny if it weren't so exactly her. By the time the final copies were stacked, initialed, and clipped, the room felt emptied out in a way expensive rooms sometimes do after truth has been spoken in them. The river outside flashed silver through the windows. Somewhere down the hall a printer started up. Life continuing. Camille handed me my copy. I slid it into my folder. My mother gathered her bag with mechanical care. Naomi, she said without looking at me, you could have handled this differently. That line had traveled generations in our family. The woman harmed is always asked to improve the tone. I stood. So could you, I said. Chloe lingered by her chair, lost now that no one was directing the scene for her. For one strange second, I could see the version of her she might have been if my parents had ever let her fail smaller and earlier. Then it was gone. My father reached the door first. Camille held it open. He stopped beside me, not quite turning his head. You enjoyed this, he said. I looked at the signed agreement in my folder, then at Julian and Monica, then at the empty chair where the forged papers would have placed my future if I had done what they expected. No, I replied evenly. I just refused to donate my life to your bad planning. Then I walked out, leaving him to decide whether that sentence hurt because it was cruel or because it was accurate. The next few weeks were administrative in the way justice often is. Less cinematic, more satisfying. Court dates were scheduled. Supervised visitation terms were outlined. Paternity moved from paper to fact. Julian took parenting classes he had never needed to be forced into because that's what decent people do when they realize how much they still have to learn. Monica turned out to be a miracle of practical tenderness. She taught Julian how to warm bottles without overheating them, how to judge a cry by rhythm, how to clip impossibly small fingernails without losing his nerve. I spent 2 Saturdays at their apartment helping organize Lily's things and labeling freezer bags of breast milk Chloe had pumped inconsistently and left in my parents' garage freezer next to a sheet cake from Easter. Lily learned my voice quickly. She liked my watch. She hated long car rides. She snored softly when overtired, like a tiny, indignant librarian. My parents, meanwhile, began their descent in pieces. My father's first consequence came from his own profession. Someone at the bank heard about the forged documents, then someone else heard about the legal fee reimbursement, then compliance asked questions he was not prepared to answer cleanly. He was not criminally charged because Camille had structured the settlement to prioritize custody and containment over spectacle, but internal review is its own kind of slow public undressing. He lost his senior vice president track within a month. The corner office he had been circling for 3 years went to a younger woman from audit with excellent instincts and no family scandal attached to her name. He kept his job. He lost his trajectory. For men like my father, that's a distinction with teeth. My mother's consequences were more social, which meant they cut exactly where she lived. The story of the ballroom traveled faster than I expected, not because I told it, but because my family had invited too many spectators. A forged guardianship announcement at a graduation reception is the kind of thing women repeat in hushed voices over lunch, and then again in the parking lot with more detail. By June, my mother had quietly stepped back from coordinating the St. Bartholomew Charity Gala. By July, 2 members of her church committee had stopped asking her to host. By August, the Bridge Club still met, but not at her house. Image is fragile when it turns out to have receipts. Chloe's karma came sharpest and strangest. Her fellowship in Barcelona rescinded itself the moment she failed to file the required custody disclosures properly and missed the acceptance window while dealing with legal counsel. The same professor who had praised her final campaign presentation wrote a cool recommendation for a local contract internship instead. And that internship disappeared after 3 weeks when Chloe treated deadlines the way she had always treated apologies, as decorative suggestions. It turned out the world beyond my parents' house did not rearrange itself to protect her sparkle. She moved into a studio in Wicker Park with cheap gray flooring and a landlord who did not care that she cried prettily. For the first time in her life, she had to learn the humiliating mechanics of an ordinary consequence. Aunt Melissa became, unexpectedly, a cautionary tale. Her video from the ballroom never made it online, because Camille secured immediate takedown threats before she could indulge her taste for drama, but several family members learned she had kept filming after the reveal specifically because, in her words to a cousin, the angle was incredible. That sentence circulated. Her invitation shrank. Even in our family, there are social penalties for treating a custody ambush like premium content. As for communication, it came in waves. My mother sent paragraphs that wore guilt like perfume. I don't know where we lost each other. The family isn't the same. Lily was supposed to bring us together. My father preferred bluntness. You have damaged relationships that may not recover. When you are ready to be reasonable, let me know. Chloe was hardest to predict. Some nights she sent threats. If you tell anyone else, I swear. Other nights, she sent photos from old vacations. Remember Cape May? Remember when it was just us? Then, 3 weeks later, I miss you. I hate that I miss you. I never answered any of them. I archived, documented, and moved on. Silence is not always surrender. Sometimes it is filing. 6 months later, I was standing barefoot in my new kitchen on a Sunday morning with sunlight spread across the quartz counter like honey, waiting for coffee to finish dripping into a white ceramic mug that said still in small gold letters. I had moved out of Lincoln Park and into a quieter place in Ravenswood with bigger windows and a narrow balcony full of rosemary, lavender, and a stubborn basil plant that refused to die. The apartment smelled like coffee, clean cotton, and the faint mineral scent of November light on cold glass. My phone was face down. My shoulders were loose. There is no luxury, quite like a morning no one thinks they can invade. I leaned against the counter and watched steam rise from the mug. For most of my life, peace had felt conditional, something that appeared briefly after I had solved enough, soothed enough, given enough. Now it lived in the ordinary. A clean sink, a locked door, a calendar with my own name all over it, and no one else's emergency stapled to the margins. The ordeal had left me with more than legal bills and a sharpened tolerance for manipulation. It had shown me what I was capable of when I stopped using my competence as a hiding place. I had spent years in hospital compliance at Northwestern, tracing small institutional failures before they became catastrophes. documentation, escalation, systems, pattern recognition. I knew how abuse hid inside paperwork. I knew how decent people were often outperformed by louder, more shameless ones. After the settlement, after the court orders, after the last reimbursement cleared, I gave notice. 3 months after that, I opened Clear Harbor Advocacy. Not a law firm. Not therapy. Something between practical strategy and personal defense for people being cornered into unpaid caregiving, coerced signatures, or family obligations with suspiciously legal consequences. Adult daughters, elder siblings, divorced sons bullied into taking on debts that weren't theirs. Women whose relatives used sentiment as a gateway to identity theft. My first clients came by referral from Camille and Nia, then from Monica's church, then from a social worker I met through Julian's parenting coordinator. I rented a small office with matte black hardware and a waiting room chair no one sank into. I taught people how to document pressure, how to recognize when a simple favor had legal scaffolding under it, how to say no in ways that survived contact with guilt. Turns out there was a market for that. Turns out there was a need. And I wasn't alone. Julian, and I never became the kind of people family gossip expects when a man and woman survive a crisis together. We became something better, trustworthy to each other, honest. There is a great relief in relationships with no hidden invoices attached. Monica adopted me in the soft, practical way some women do, by dropping off Caldo in winter and texting me reminders to bring a heavier coat when Lake Michigan got mean. Lily, who was nearly 1 by then, called me Nomi before she got the hang of Aunt Naomi, which everyone agreed was better anyway. The friendship I hadn't seen coming was Tessa. The first time we met in person after the hearing, it was at a small cafe on Southport with green tile walls and mismatched wooden chairs. She arrived 10 minutes early, hair twisted into a clip, camera bag at her feet, and looked exactly like what she was, tired of being useful to the wrong people. There was awkwardness at first, of course. She had stood beside Chloe in too many photos, laughed in too many kitchens, absorbed too many secrets. But betrayal and integrity are often separated by a single moment of moral clarity. Tessa had hers. After that, she was unsentimental about it. "I should have said something sooner," she told me over coffee. "You said something in time." She looked down at her cup. I knew she was reckless. I didn't know she was willing to make a baby part of the performance. Neither had I, not really. Not until the ballroom. Over time, Tessa became part of my life in the steady way good people do. She shot headshots for Clear Harbor. She helped me redesign the intake forms, so clients didn't feel like suspects when they walked in. She came over on Sundays and took the basil plant personally. Once, while sorting donated baby clothes at Monica's, she glanced up and said, "You know the wildest part. She really thought the public pressure would work because everyone in your family was used to you absorbing impact." I folded a stack of onesies and said, "They were right about that part." She smiled sadly. "Just not anymore." Karma updates arrived casually after that, which is how you know you've made it to the far side of something. One Tuesday, Camille called me while I was leaving my office. "You won't believe who I just saw at Daily Center," she said. "Who?" "Your father. Looking for a litigator because the bank passed him over again. He's developing an interest in accountability language." I laughed, actually laughed, standing in a marble lobby while the revolving door breathed cold air at my ankles. Another time Monica texted me from the grocery store. Guess who was buying formula with coupons and arguing about prices? It was Chloe. That one sat with me for a while. Not because I enjoyed it, because it meant reality had finally reached her in a language she understood. Money, sleep, logistics, no stage lights, no applause, just the stubborn, repetitive honesty of responsibility. The strangest message came from my mother nearly a year after the ballroom. "I made your favorite roast chicken tonight and forgot there wasn't any reason to call you." I read it once. Then again, there was no manipulation in it. Or not much. Just the thin, aching outline of a woman meeting the house she had built after the people inside it stopped performing gratitude. I didn't answer. But for the first time, I didn't feel anger either. Just distance. Clean and complete. That evening in late spring, almost a full year after the graduation, the city was washed in orange light. I was on my balcony with a glass of sparkling water and lime, watching the sunset lay copper across the neighboring rooftops while the first windows downtown began to glow. Warm air moved through the rosemary and carried that green, dry scent upward. Below, someone laughed on the sidewalk. Somewhere farther off, a train passed with its long metallic sigh. The sky over the buildings looked painted by a patient hand, orange deepening toward rose, rose thinning into blue. City lights started blooming one by one like embers. Tessa was with me, barefoot, cross-legged in the chair opposite mine, editing photos from a community fundraiser on her tablet. If you had told me the year before that I would end one of the hardest chapters of my life drinking lime water with my sister's former confidant while my niece napped safely 3 neighborhoods away, I would have thought the universe was trying too hard to be symbolic. But life is less interested in symmetry than people are. It just keeps offering strange, gentle replacements for what breaks. Tessa looked up from the screen. Monica sent a picture. Lily figured out how to take off one sock but not the other. An innovator, I said. She gets that from Julian. She gets her theatrical timing from Chloe. Tessa groaned. Cruel. Accurate. We clinked glasses. That tiny sound, crystal against crystal, felt more ceremonial than the fake applause in the ballroom ever had. For a long time, I had believed strength meant endurance. Staying calm, being reliable, taking the hit, and keeping my voice even. There was value in some of that. Composure is power. But I know now that endurance without choice is just beautifully managed captivity. The woman I was before all this would have called self-erasure maturity. She would have thanked herself for being the reasonable one while everyone else fed on the arrangement. She would have confused surviving a bad system with mastering it. The woman I am now knows better. I am still calm, still measured, still the person people underestimate because I don't announce my force before I use it. But I no longer believe goodness requires accessibility. I no longer think love and access are the same. I no longer see rescue as a personality trait. Sometimes, when the evening light hits the balcony rail just right, I think about the ballroom. The polished brass, the fake tears, the warm weight of Lily in my arms, and the microphone catching Chloe's voice as she tried to turn my future into a surprise announcement. And in some quiet, private part of myself, I do thank them. Not for what they did, for what they revealed. They showed me exactly what remained in my life only because I kept saying yes. They forced the hidden architecture into view. After that, rebuilding was almost a privilege. Tessa set her tablet aside and leaned back, letting the sunset wash her face gold. You ever think about what would have happened if you just smiled for the photo? Yes, I said. And I looked out over the rooftops, at the slow spread of evening, at the world continuing in all its ordinary beauty. I think, I said, that some people spend their whole lives being chosen for sacrifice and mistake it for being loved. She was quiet for a second. Then she lifted her glass toward me. To know more, volunteer martyrs. I touched mine to hers. To informed refusal. We drank. Below us, car headlights drew pale ribbons through the street. Somewhere across the city, Julian was probably trying to convince Lily that bedtime was not a constitutional violation. Monica would be pretending not to laugh. Camille was likely still at her office, terrifying someone with a fountain pen. My mother was maybe setting a table for too few people. My father was still learning that status cannot indemnify character. Chloe, if I had to guess, was discovering that motherhood is much harder when nobody can be tricked into doing the invisible half for you. And me, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not untouched, not innocent, not naive enough to believe betrayal always comes from enemies, but no longer available for conversion into someone else's convenience. There is a serenity in that which feels almost holy. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making people suffer. It's about making sure they can never use your silence as a bridge again. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about their downfall at all. It's about your refusal becoming the door you finally walk through.